And y'all don't know what I went through.
Do you have a card in your hands right now?
Nike Talk was that place that spiraled what you enjoy now.
Anyone who brought a Kobe shoe in, I would clean it for free.
Man, Melo was better than a lot of people in the league.
I saw that. My favorite jersey's that one, the Barkley.
Kobe fours.
Oh, yeah.
Episode 53. This is the Dandin and RJ Machismo podcast. This is Dandin.
It's RJ Machismo. What's going on, everybody?
All right. So tonight we got a special guest, a returning guest. We got Josh Tolentino. He is a reporter / insider for the Philadelphia Inquirer, which he covers the Philadelphia Eagles. How you doing tonight? How you doing tonight, Josh?
I'm doing good. Y'all happy to rock out back on the pod?
Yes,
Rocking the
sir.
tee. Big game coming up.
Yeah.
Always happy to join.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. So, Josh is a returning guest. Last time we had him on, he was with the Athletic, covering the Tampa Bay Rays. So now, he's with the Philadelphia Eagles now, covering the NFL. So what's that like for me switching from baseball to football?
It's been a good transition, Kuya. Obviously I had covered the Packers before, so it wasn't necessarily new. But bouncing around a little bit from the Packers to the Dolphins and now the Eagles, they've all been pretty unique experiences. But this fan base, man, up in Philly, they're crazy, yo. They care about the Eagles so much. So it's been a good transition. Happy to be here on year 2 with the Eagles.
Yeah, man. So much continued success. I've been watching your work lately. Josh, has been doing a lot of great stuff for the Philadelphia Inquirer with your articles, and you also have a show too. When you guys record, like during the weekdays, right?
It's actually right before the game, so we go live 90 minutes before kickoff. So hour and a half before every game. It's a pregame show. It's called Game Day Central. It's sponsored by Comcast out here. So that's up everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube TV. So tap in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll definitely go plug it in. So yeah, before we start, we want to shout out to RJ, celebrating, year 36. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like Brian Westbrook year.
Yeah, happy birthday, y'all.
Happy birthday, man.
Yes, thank you.
How does it feel to be young again?
I mean, it's just being a blessing, man. Just keep going over here, man. 2 girls now, so each year is different, but we're gonna keep going.
There you go. There you go. And RJ, RJ's also a big, Philadelphia Eagles fan, so he's been through it all, man. He went from Coy Detmer to Donovan McNabb to
Bobby
Carson
Hoying,
Wentz.
all those guys.
Yep.
Carson Wentz, everything,
So
man. Michael Vick.
And you also witnessed a Super Bowl champion too. So hopefully, this could be the year. That'll be dope.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So we're definitely gonna talk more about the game. So why don't you go start off, RJ?
All right, and you can just plug in your Twitter as well, Josh, so they could follow you for all the Eagles fans that's watching right now. The play-by-plays and the training camps. I mean, the practices. So just plug in your Twitter there right quick.
Yeah, for sure. Y'all can tap in at JCT Sports. That's my Instagram and Twitter. I got y'all daily on these Eagles, man. And like what you said, they're off to a pretty good start. A lot of question marks at the beginning of the season, but they're coming off a pretty hot game, man, coming into the Washington.
Yes, sir. All right. So my first question to you, man. So you've been covering the Eagles for 2 years now. What's the differences have you seen from this team from like the last season through just 2 games? So give us that insight.
Yeah, I think the obvious, is Jalen Hurts. But beyond that, I'm sure we're going to talk about Jalen a lot throughout the pod. But really just the personnel. Howie Roseman, the general manager, he crushed the offseason, yo. Like he really could not have done a better job, and when you look at all the moves he made from A.J. Brown, Hassan Reddick there on the edge, who honestly hasn't really even tapped into his potential here through the first 2 games. And then he crushed the draft too. Jordan Davis, the big defensive tackle.
Yep.
N'Kobe Dean, man, Cam Jurgens, the center.
Cam
You know,
Jurgens.
y'all don't know, even fans, you know, don't know too much about him, but he really did look like the future. You know, replacing Jason Kelsey eventually, but.
Yep.
Even a guy like James Bradbury, man, like that really solidified the secondary.
Right.
CJ Gardner Johnson, you know, I'm just continuing the list here, but
Yeah.
Howie, he really crushed the offseason. So that's probably the biggest difference is that you know, Nick Sirianni, the head coach, and defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, they got much better pieces and personnel to actually execute what they want in games. Because like last year, you know, there were some players getting heated. You know, Fletcher Cox,
Yeah.
Brandon Graham. You know, they didn't necessarily agree with what was being called, but
Right.
you know, now you got better playmakers to be able to make those plays happen. So like outside of Jalen, it's really, I guess, the pieces that they've surrounded him with. They're in a much better place to be able to compete this year.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. So, yeah, like I said, you know, Hy Roseman, he really did a good job adding those pieces, man. So, I mean, I know it's only 2 games, so it shouldn't be any excuses at all. But you know, it's coming along together, in my opinion. So, you know, we'll just have to see. So,
yeah, and like you think about the new pieces like James Bradbury, CJ Gardner Johnson, those are 2 new starters in the secondary, along with a new starting safety, and Marcus Epps.
yeah,
Like a lot happens, yo. Like after that ball is snapped, you know, between the wide receiver getting into the second and third levels, a lot of communication has to happen. So kind of like that first game, like that was pretty much understood. Like there was going to be sloppiness, and you know, guys weren't necessarily going to be in the right spots, but they really buckled down in the second game, and again, they're kind of on a heater coming into this game against old friend Carson Wentz.
Yeah, and let's not forget about Kaiser White. I mean, I think that's also a big addition. You know,
Chargers.
I mean, yeah, because I mean, you know, last year, I mean, I think linebackers is a big issue as well. I feel like it was C.J. Edwards that was pretty much stepping up. I mean, you know, Davian Teller was very promising after injury. You know what happens with that. But I think now T.J. Edwards with him and N'Kobe Dean upcoming, I think that you know that linebacker core is going to be something special as well too, man. So that's a big addition.
I'm glad you mentioned that. There's just been so many names, you know, with Howie and the additions in the offseason. But man, Kaiser, Kaiser, he really impressed me during camp. You would see a lot of screens and, you know, passes to the flat to Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell. And Kaiser has been, you know, he was with them step for step, man. He's got a lot of juice in him. And not just that, him and TJ Edwards, you mentioned, they tackle hard, yo. And linebackers in Philly, there hasn't been a lot of stability, you know, there at that position over the past decade. But with Kaiser and TJ, it really seems like they've got something going, especially with N'Kobe Dean kind of waiting to make that impact.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely talk more about the Philly defense. My opinion that front four is like underrated in the league. So we'll talk more about the defense, Josh. So my next question for you, Jalen Hurts, you know, he's rising star for the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback. So he's had 2 amazing games so far, you know, with Detroit and, you know, the Monday night game against Minnesota. What improvements have you seen so far, and what does he need to do in order for him to get to the next level?
Yeah, I think we should rewind real quick to the NFC wildcard game out in Tampa. And that game, we really saw what Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator, now he's the head coach out there for the Buccaneers, how he game planned against Jalen. He basically dared the Eagles to throw. And in that game specifically, you know, Jalen wasn't able to get the job done, obviously. And we saw not just that, they dared him. You know, obviously he's a dual threat quarterback. He likes to use his feet a lot to move the chains. They took away him running to the right and made him go to his left. And we saw just, you know, turnovers, missed throws, a lot of bad technique from Jalen. To his credit, man, heading into year 3, it's his second season as the starter. A very early sample size, but we have seen definitely Jalen improve with his technique, with his mechanics, with getting the ball out. The numbers literally say that last year he was the last or it took him the longest rather of all NFL quarterbacks for him to get the ball out. It was like over 3 seconds. It's only 2 games, but that number is like I think like 2.4, 2.5. So it's noticeably different that he's getting the ball out quicker. So to his credit, again, he worked hard in the offseason at improving his mechanics, his throwing mechanics, specifically with his drop back. The Eagles run a lot of shotgun and pistol, but when he is under center, he's getting the ball out quick. Obviously a lot has to do with the playmakers that they added. AJ Brown's the biggest one. And we've seen it throughout the first 2 games. The best part of AJ Brown's game is yards after catch and catching the ball in the middle, and, throwing the ball to the middle last year, or really the first 2 years of Jalen Hurts' career, not a strength for him. And over these past 2 games, we've really seen him tapped into that potential again, thanks to AJ being here. He's got a good comfort level with him.
And to your point, AJ Brown, I think that was a great signing. That was that draft day trade, right? I think they gave up a first and a second, and that's it, right? Is that what they gave up for AJ Brown? I think that's a steal. And then he's not even in his prime yet, and then he signed him for $100 million for 4 years, something like that.
Yeah. He's got a 4-year deal worth up to $100 million. We see it. He's 3rd right now in the league in yards per route run, only behind Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill. That's pretty good company to be in, y'all. And I was talking to AJ today, and he was like, basically, when he catches that ball, he just turns into a running back, man. Like he really wants to pick up yak. That's his big. That's his big thing.
Yeah, you got that yak. They for me, AJ Brown reminds me of like his comp, I guess body type is like a TO/DK Metcalf /Anquan Bolden molded in one. Because he's tough. Like you were saying, he's tough after the catch. Especially those games against that game with Detroit. He had 10 catches for 150 yards. He was just shrugging off all that yak.
he dragged dude 15 yards.
Yeah, pretty much. That's just nothing to him.
I don't know if that was Okuda, but he dragged somebody 15 yards. But yeah, that's crazy.
And I think it's also worth mentioning, y'all, some people forget this, but him and Jalen Hurts, they're literally best friends. Back when they were both seniors in high school, Jalen, he had already committed to Alabama, but they took a visit together. And again, they were seniors in high school. Jalen was trying to convince AJ to join him out there. AJ obviously didn't choose Alabama. He ended up going to Ole Miss, but from that visit, they stayed tapped in. They continued to build their friendship, their relationship. And now, it's kind of like exactly what they had envisioned, kind of coming full circle, being able to play together in the league. So having that chemistry certainly helps. So then you pair that with, Devontae Smith, who obviously played with Jalen at Alabama.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good duo, man. When you look across the league, they can kind of compete with anyone out there.
Yeah, most definitely, man.
Like I said, talking about AJ Brown, that just answered our, that question number 3. But in your own opinion, though, do you think he is worth the extension that the Eagles gave up for, to be part of that offense? In your opinion, Josh?
Oh, certainly, because you look at the receiver room last year. I've always been really high on Devontae, but the drop off between Devontae and the next guy, it was big, yo. We're talking about I see these guys every single day. I see them warm up. I see them go through their routes. Devontae was just different compared to, a guy like Jalen Reagor or JJ Arcega-Whiteside. The crispness of his routes, his footwork, he just had no help, and obviously they've got Dallas Goedert, one of the better tight ends in the league, but from a receiver standpoint, they needed more weapons. And everyone looks at, we're talking about they coming off a Monday night game in which they faced Justin Jefferson. Everyone looked at that draft, from Howie Roseman passing on Justin Jefferson and, taking Jalen Reagor there, even Terry McLaurin, who's obviously had so much success in Washington. And he got hammered for, not taking either of those guys in consecutive years. But you think about it, Howie because that, the receivers have struggled so much. That's why he was aggressive in wanting to improve the group, adding AJ. So I'd say he's definitely worth it. Obviously, that's a lot of money. That's a
Yeah.
lot of that's a lot of commitment. But what AJ has brought to this room, this receiver room, and his comfort level with Jalen Hurts, you really can't put a price tag on that. And he certainly proved that he's worth that amount of money through these first few games.
So let me
Yeah, I
ask.
mean, you could even see that in the offense. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah, I mean, that you can even see that in your the offense that they ran. I mean, last year I felt like even the year prior they tried to run 2 tight end sets. Now they could go ahead and just do three wide receivers and 1 tight end. So that's like a biggest addition to that offense, and that whole dynamic is just changing now. So
Yeah, last year they ran a lot of 12, 13 personnel.
yeah, yep,
It's like we almost rarely see that now.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
exactly.
they got so many weapons. We haven't even really talked about the running backs. They led the league last year in rushing. They're second right now.
Yeah,
So again, a lot of weapons here for Jalen Hurts, and that was really the big question coming into the season: is will he be able to utilize them and kind of take this team to the next level?
right.
So let me ask you, Josh, since I know you cover the Eagles and you see them through training camp and now, what's the relationship like between AJ Brown and Devontae Smith? Is it kind of like a big brother, little brother, where they kind of make each other better through practice and like what is that relationship like with them?
Yeah, I think let's rewind to week 1 when AJ Brown, he tied his career high. He showed he was worth every single penny that they're paying him. He had 155 receiving yards, and Devontae Smith had 0 catches. So it was kind of the talk of town. What happened to Devontae? They've got to get the
Yeah,
ball to Devontae.
yep.
Obviously, when you pay a guy 100 million, you got to get him his
Oh yeah,
touches.
yep.
But the biggest thing that kind of made me laugh at the whole situation is, we're talking about Devontae Smith, a former Heisman Trophy winner. That's very rare for a receiver to win that award. Is the best player in college
In
football,
college, yep. Hmm.
and not just that. I talked to Smitty throughout the week, and he's like, "Yo, remember I worked with Jerry Jeudy. He was teammates with Henry Ruggs. He was teammates with Calvin
Waddle.
Ridley. Yep, Jalen Waddle. So he's used to like having talent around him.
Hmm.
So when you ask about the relationship, they almost just complement each other. So the best way I can put it is that AJ Brown, he's definitely that my ball type receiver. You throw him a 50-50 ball, he's going to go up there and get it. And that's no discredit
Hmm.
to Devontae, because he can obviously climb the ladder
Oh yeah,
too, and
yeah,
compete for those competitive catches. Whereas Devontae's game is more so predicated a lot on technicality, route running,
yeah. Route running.
and timing specifically. And that's really where we've seen Jalen Hurts kind of improve there over these past few games, is the
Yeah,
timing and anticipation throws. That's really one word I'd probably key on, is the anticipation throws of him, knowing or trusting that Devontae is going to be in a spot and him getting the ball there, because that's again what Devontae's game is predicated on, is timing and route running. He's a master at that. That's why he won the Heisman, and that's why the
yep.
Eagles obviously took him last year with their top pick.
Yeah, and I mean, you could even see like that last game last year. Recalling back to that Denver game, I mean, you could see Devontae going up for
Hmm.
that ball too. That was like the big example. So he could do both. So
Big facts. Yeah, definitely. All right. So next question for you, Josh. So Darius Slay, he's one of the highest paid, corners in the league. Also, I think one of the elites. So he had an okay game week 1. He had, I think he allowed like 3 catches for about 55 yards and a touchdown. But Monday night, when the spotlight is on him, he shut down, quote unquote, the best wide receiver in the NFL in Justin Jefferson.
and
Um,
gritty.
doing no gritties. It was just all Jalen Hurts doing the gritty. Um, what was do you also see a difference with him as well? And do you think that he's the Eagles' best defensive player on the roster?
Yeah, so I'll kind of like pose this as a question. Back in 2016, what were y'all doing? What was life? I mean, we're in 2022 right now, so obviously what's that, 6 years ago? Like for me personally, I was still in school. I think I was a junior in college. Life was like very different, obviously. So what were y'all up to in 2016?
Oh, no,
2016.
good
That's a good
question,
question, man.
I was
I think I
here.
was.
How old was
I wasn't
Mateo?
married.
I think he was like, yeah. So my Mateo was, he's like 1.5. Yeah, he's about 1.5. No, wait, 2. No. I'm sorry, 1. He's 1. He's 1. So he's going through the walking. You know what I mean? Like talking. So just enjoying the fatherhood. So
And
yeah.
and RJ, what were you up to?
Man, I was not married. I didn't have 2 kids. So I was living on my own. So I think I was in the best shape of my life at that time too. So from what I can remember, yeah.
All right, so we talking about, again, throwback to 2016, like very different places in our personal individual lives. I'm gonna throw a stat at y'all. Since 2016, Darius Slay, again, we talk about top cornerbacks in the league. You think of J.C. Jackson, Jalen Ramsey, Denzel Ward,
Yeah.
Xavier Howard, AJ Terrell. Those are guys that
Alexander.
always, yeah, Jair.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
guys that always get mentioned. And for some reason, people just forget about Slay. But here's a number for you. Yeah, since 2016, Big Play Slay, as he likes to be called, he has the most pass breakups in the league since then. You know who's second and third? Third. So Darius Slay, since 2016, he's got 89 PBUs. That's most in the league during those 6 years. Jalen Ramsey's third at 76, and his teammate, Darius Slay's teammate, James Bradbury, he's second with 84.
Damn.
And you think about that. I mean, that was such a long time ago, yo, and he's still playing at that level. We talk about this season specifically through 2 games. He leads the league in PBUs. He had 2 picks last week rather. Slay is still elite, yo. I think people just kind of forget about him. And in that primetime stage last week, again, everyone has to continue to go through the season, but I mean, that's the type of performance that will get you all pro type consideration at the end of the year. People remember those types of performances. And Nadine, you mentioned that first game against the Lions. Honestly, he had strapped up pretty well that game. It was just at the very end, and it was good coverage too. Gave up a last second garbage time touchdown, but when you talk about Slay, man, I think he's like still at the top of his game. I think he's like 31 years old. He's still playing like that. There was a route specifically with Justin Jefferson in the red zone, and you really can't teach that technique. But anyways, Justin Jefferson, he tried to do like a double move on Slay in single coverage, and when you look at the tape, like Slay, like if that's any other cornerback, they're probably like hips turned the other way, touchdown. And he was just so patient with like not biting at Justin Jefferson's move, and that play ended up being a pick. I think it was his first pick of the game. But he just plays with such discipline, man. Like if you want to know football, just talk to Slay in the locker room, man, because like he will, like he can chop it up all day. And I've learned a lot just speaking with him about how he likes to cover these receivers. So sorry, I can't even remember the original question, but Slay is like he's still definitely playing at an elite level.
Oh yeah. So my question was, Josh, is he the best defensive player on the roster for the Eagles?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, they've got they've obviously got guys up front that are pretty well respected. Guys that some guys that haven't even made noise much this season, like Hassan Reddick. Josh Sweat seems to be continuing the Pro Bowl season that he had last year type performance. But yeah, Slay is definitely up there. If he's not, I mean, when you talk about top playmakers on the team, it's probably Slay, Jason Kelce, their center, Lane Johnson, the right tackle. And again, those are all older guys, but Slay's definitely up there. And not just that, he's a captain for the first time in his career. So that was like a pretty emotional moment for him a few weeks ago.
That's crazy. Like how long he's been in the league? Like 7 years now. And I mean, I'm sure like being a captain, right, means a lot, especially you've worked your way up to where you are. Considering he's one of the elite cornerbacks, highest paid, players in his position, and he's putting in
Yeah,
the work.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he was
Yeah,
drafted in 2013, and like looking at his stats right now, since then he has 74 pass breakups. So like you said, he does have the most since then. So
Yeah,
it's crazy.
and
yeah,
what
and
20?
one thing like we probably mentioned is that Slay, man, I mean, he kind of built his reputation with the Lions as a man corner,
Yeah.
and the Eagles defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, when he got here last year, he implemented a defense that's very zone heavy. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, we're talking about the Vikings probably ran like upwards of 70 plays last week, and
Yeah.
they only went man 19 times, and that's a high number for the Eagles. Like
Yeah.
they rarely do
Yeah.
man coverage. Yeah, so for Slay to still putting up those numbers, and they're not even playing man. Um, I mean that kind of speaks of volumes to what he's been able to do.
Yeah, and even the Eagles, they don't even blitz a lot. I mean, you see that game. Gannon was actually able to trust those corners and send the safeties, like sent Maddox in there, sent Epps in there to blitz Cousins. So I mean, he was just like, all right, go ahead, dial it in. But I think the stats last week, I think they're like the least team to just like set up a blitz, like at least 19% of the time they'll just blitz. So yeah, I mean, Slay's I think he's one of the best defensive players in that team at the moment, and he deserves to be a captain. So it's
Yeah.
crazy.
And then what did Howie Roseman gave up for him? Like nickels and pennies, pretty much
It's
for him.
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy. Like the
yeah,
Lions just gave him basically for literally free, pretty much.
yeah. Exactly.
It's insane, man.
Yeah. Yeah, so sticking with the defense, Josh, in my opinion, I mean, the front four, man. I mean, I know they haven't gotten to the quarterback as much or dial in a lot of pressure, but they got there a little bit. So I mean, obviously they're the most underrated lines in the league, but how good can they be as the season goes, in your opinion?
Yeah, again, we got to look at last year and kind of compare it again to what they've got this year. Like last year, they were there was one specific game that I remember. It was after the Raiders game, and
Yeah,
it was a bad loss. The team was 2-5, and Fletch walked in to the press conference, Fletcher Cox, and he was pissed. Like I'm
yeah,
talking
I
about,
remember.
like he went on the podium and he just started like essentially blaming the coaches like for putting them
Yeah,
in a bad position. He's like
exactly.
I think the specific quote, if I could paraphrase it, is that I get paid to go after the quarterback. I don't get paid to cover a screen or go into flat.
Yeah, yeah,
And so Jonathan Gannon is trying to implement in his defense, again, very zone heavy. It's
yeah.
focused a lot on limiting big plays,
Limiting. Yep.
explosive plays rather. That's a
Hmm.
key metric that they use in defense. As they prepare for this upcoming matchup against the skill players like Scary Terry, Curtis Samuel,
Yeah,
Jahan Dotson. Like the
yeah,
emphasis is going to be playing deep zone coverage to limit explosive plays. They're okay with like intermediate gains, 5-7 yards. If they're going to throw it underneath, that's fine. That's like okay in his mind. Um, but again, you look at the defense from last year to this year, they just have so much better pieces. I mean, RJ earlier talked about Kaiser White, TJ Edwards playing at a better level. But not just that, they went out and got Hassan Reddick again. Like this is a guy that over the past 2 seasons, I think he had like 24 sacks.
yeah,
That's a lot of damn sacks. And
yeah,
over these first 2 weeks, like he still hasn't been able to get to the quarterback. And you think about that's scary. Like if they actually once he actually gets started going, and there's some emotion involved with Hassan because he's from out here, like he's from
yeah.
Camden,
Temple.
right across. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He went
Quite
to
a
Temple.
Temple. Hmm.
Yeah, he's basically Philly born and bred. So it was like kind of emotional for him to come home. He talked about playing with nerves these first couple of weeks. So like once they get him going, and pair him with Josh Sweat, who had a Pro Bowl year last year, and then you think about the depth guys, Brandon Graham, famously known for strip sack Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
When you got Brendan Graham coming off the bench, you're in a pretty good spot, with Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick leading the way. When those guys need a breather, they throw in BG there. But they've got a lot to be able to tap into. Last year, I think they finished second to last in the league in sacks. So kind of what Rael had mentioned earlier, their blitz percentage was, I think, at 19 week one.
19.
They dialed it up a little. I think they were at 24% this past week. But again, there's some ways to work around the blitz percentage. Just because it's low doesn't mean that Gannon's not doing other things to harass the quarterback. We talk about Carson Wentz here. There's simulated pressures, like dropping Sweat or Reddick into coverage, and maybe sending like Avonte Maddox or CJ Gardner-Johnson. So nothing too exotic, really. Again, their defense is based on limiting big plays, and that's what I would expect to see on Sunday.
It's crazy because I watched the first two games with Detroit and Minnesota. Like they were getting to the quarterback with just four up front. You know what I mean? Like they just let the linebackers just stay in the middle, let them get the under coverage, under like the passes underneath. But they were getting home. You know what I mean? Like they were getting home clear. They're knocking down Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff. Getting sacks. You know what I mean? Like that front four is tenacious, and the way they just move them. They're not just in like one position, especially like you're saying, Josh. The key factor is going to be Hassan Reddick. Like he is a pass specialist, professional. I mean, he was with a bum team with Carolina. Now, like you put him in like a good team, with that Philly defense, it's like sky's the limit. Like what he can untap, and he can definitely make everyone around him better.
Yeah, and they mix in different fronts as well. They like to do 5-man at times with Jordan Davis there in the middle. And this past week we saw it work a lot against Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook had like less than 30 rushing yards.
And I have in my fantasy.
There you go. So they cleaned up the sloppy tackling in week one, which was kind of expected. But Dalvin Cook, I mean, he's still, a lot of attention on Justin Jefferson, but I mean, Dalvin Cook is still a household name, and to be able to limit him to, that amount of yardage, I mean, that shows that's a pretty tough defense in both aspects, in the passing game and in the running game.
Yeah, that defense is really interesting to me. I mean, I know he came from a Vic Fangio type of, defense, but I guess Gannon just turning into a hybrid type, because like you say, he does like a five-man front, being Jordan Davis' nose tackle. And it's like a hybrid type stuff. So, I mean, it all came from that too soft shell to prevent big plays. But like I said, I would like to see the forefront get to the quarterback more. But, the problem with like last year, like the past few seasons, is just Gannon just couldn't really dial up much because he had to rely on the DBs, like he just can't rely on the corners. I guess he couldn't trust them. I mean, now looking at the Vikings game, I mean, like I said, he was just sending some pressure there, and I'm like, wow, that's the first time I've seen that defense so aggressive. And even Fletch had a strip sack, I think, So, like I said, the potential, man, like you said, the potential is there. And, hopefully, they can just dial it up more and, improve throughout the season. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the blitzes and pressures. One thing that impressed me about Gannon is that he did those in known passing downs. I'm talking about like 3rd and long. Known passing downs is like when they're not going to run, or it's like you're very confident that they're not going to run. And looking ahead to the next opponent, again, a familiar face in Carson Wentz. Through the first 2 weeks, Carson Wentz is 0 for 6 against cover 0. So I would expect to definitely see some cover 0. For on cover 0, that's essentially that they're sending everybody and leaving the DBs in single coverage across the secondary. So, they're depending on guys like Bradbury, Slay to win their one-on-one matchups, and for them to get to the quarterback quickly to force, if not a sack, a rush throw. And we saw a lot of that with Kirk Cousins and again, they're going to try to affect Carson Wentz here on
Yeah,
Sunday. It's going to be an emotional game for, everybody
yeah,
involved.
yeah.
Yep. It's always
I
like
mean,
that.
it's like back to back, man. It's like Rager came in, now it's Carson, and then next week it'll be Doug. So, it's like revenge tours, I guess, if you want to call it that way. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame that
Yeah,
Carson's first game against the Eagles isn't back in Philly, but I'm sure that'll come later in the season, and
Yeah.
obviously with
yeah,
Doug Peterson coming back next week,
yeah,
so
Oh
definitely a
man.
few kind of like homecoming type games these next couple weeks.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you guys I think they're gonna be playing in Philly. I think Monday Night Football, right? I think that's like, or is Sunday night? I think it's like
Yeah,
in
way
November.
later in the season. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's
yeah,
in
yeah,
November.
yeah.
All right, so heading into this Sunday's game, Josh. So I know, like I said, we're gonna put it on the other side. So you also cover for every game that you cover, you also cover the opponent. So for this Sunday's game, which Washington Commander players do you think the Eagles need to watch for?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about this offline, but when you talk about the Commanders, and we saw this last season on that weird game, it was supposed to be like a Monday game, and then it got pushed to
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
But we
Yeah.
saw that, we saw that in that game specifically, the defensive front, man, like they can get after Jalen. We're talking about Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Darren Payne. Like those are guys that can get after Jalen. But I think it starts and ends in the trenches. And the Eagles, they do have one of the best, one of the better, if not the best, offensive line in football. They've certainly looked like that throughout summer, throughout these first two games. Um, and I'm more concerned about the defense. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about the defense, but this passing offense, man, I really do think that they can compete with anyone. As long as Jalen is on his P's and Q's in the passing game, I mean, he's got so many weapons around him. We see the team is second in the league right now in rushing, basically kind of taking off what they did last year. They led the league in rushing. So I think it comes down to being able to lock up, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Dotson. If they're able to kind of limit Antonio Gibson to a Dalvin Cook type performance, then they're going to be looking pretty good. So I know it was one strong game from the defense, but I'm just not necessarily entirely sold. We got to see here as the competition gets better throughout the season,
Right.
how the defense adjusts. But really, the big thing is going to be limiting those big plays. That's kind of what the defense is built around.
Now,
Yeah, and going back to that game, like you said, from last year, that was the Garrett Gilbert game. They did get to Jalen Hurts 3 times that game too. So, and Jalen Hurts had 1 interception that game too. So, it's going to be interesting, like you said.
Yeah, and he's susceptible to sacks, just the way that his game is predicated on. He's so slippery in the pocket with his feet. But there are times, when he does want to stay in the pocket, that he could stay in there too long. And if Jordan Mailata loses track of his guy for just a second, I mean that's a sack. So as explosive as he can be, his game, again, how he plays, he is susceptible to those sacks. But again, through these first 2 games, he's been really, really good, yo. Like, I don't think you can, really place a value on that. I mean, that first game, he bailed him out so many times with his feet. This last game, we saw him take so many steps as a passer. If he keeps taking these steps, the Eagles, again, they can be pretty good in the NFC. And we talk about specifically with the division, how kind of weakened state it is right now.
Still
it's really up for the taking. Especially with what's going on with Dallas and their quarterback situation.
Yeah.
So what about Carson Wentz? I know we speak a little bit about him. I know this is going to be another emotional game facing his former team. How is the Eagles going to how are they reacting or anticipating that game on Sunday, playing against their former quarterback?
Yeah, I feel like it might kind of be too big of a moment for Carson. We've seen him throughout his career. When there's meaningful games or We saw the Colts last year, with the playoff lives on the line against a subpar opponent, and he just failed to show up. At the end of the season, literally they're at the doorstep of the playoffs, and he wasn't able to get it done. And obviously, there's a lot of emotion going to be involved for Carson. He even said it this week. Going against his former team. This is a team that took him second overall.
Yeah.
But again, this is it'll be emotional also for Jalen. But with Jalen, it's more so like he's got something to prove. Like we gotta remember, like next year he's eligible for a contract extension, and so many people have placed question marks around him and his future, and he's out here to prove people wrong that he deserves a nice contract, that he deserves to get paid like the other top quarterbacks in the league, that he can get it done. Because that's been a big question is, they kind of drafted him to be a backup, and the breakdown happened with Carson, with Doug, kind of the fallout with the Eagles from 2 years ago. And now he's the starter, and it's his second year as the starter, and he's looking to do damage, and he's certainly got all the help around him. But man, when you ask about Carson, I think they just really have to kind of get in his grill early, and if they're able to do that, they should be just fine. Honestly, it really comes down to affecting Carson and then Jalen protecting the quarterback. I mean, protecting the ball.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, he does have that happy feet, and then he likes to hold on to the ball a little longer before the pocket collapses. So I mean, you've seen it, RJ. You shared your frustrations with Carson Wentz, even though he had an MVP year before he tore that knee up. But Carson is Carson. You gotta take the good with the bad. When he's good, I mean, he's good. But now I see like why Philly fans like RJ were frustrated because there's certain things that you just scratch your head like, why did you hold on to that ball for that long, and why didn't you just throw the ball away? Those simple things. But that I guess that's what makes him Carson pretty much.
Yeah, and I mean, we also got to remember that like all these, or not all of them rather, but a bunch of these dudes, they play with him. I mean, they practice against him every day. And I was talking to BG this week at his locker, man, and he was just like, he was laughing about it. Like, he knows Carson's tendencies, and, he's sharing that information with guys like Hassan Reddick, who new to the team, Jordan Davis. But, Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat, BG, Fletch, they've all played with him. They know what Carson likes to do in the pocket, and they're going to do their best to be able to affect him. And you look at Washington's offensive line, that historically, like talking about the past decade, like they've been known to have a pretty good offensive line. The coaching staff, you talk about the Eagles coaching staff, Jonathan Gannon, Nick Sirianni, they don't take no opponent lightly. But in speaking with them throughout the week, like they do think that there's opportunities for them to make plays and be able to get to Carson pretty quick. So we'll see how it unfolds.
Yeah, another big thing too for the offensive line, man. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Chase Roulier, but I mean that might be a big loss if he's out.
He's out. He's out. They got like.
So that's a big loss, but we'll see what they can do to pretty much step up on that for the Commanders. But it'll be an interesting matchup for that defensive line into that offensive line. So we shall see, man.
Yeah. And he like you were saying, Josh. We didn't talk much about the Philly running game. That two-headed tandem with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. I mean,
Kenny G too.
Don't forget about Kenny Gainwell.
Three-headed monster, man. Like fantasy is crazy because you don't know who's gonna get the ball. Like I beat.
Yeah, in week 1, all 4 of them scored. All 3 running backs and Jalen.
It's crazy. Yeah. Like I was playing.
It was a crazy stat.
I was playing this dude that had who did he have? He had Miles Sanders, and I won by like 0.15 0.15 because it was Boston Scott that was running the ball towards the end of the game. I was like, thank God. I mean that's the Philly, the Philly formula, right? Like it's basically like the hot hand, or like who's more, who's having a better game, like running the ball. I mean, you can go through Gainwell, you can go through Boston Scott, you can go through Miles Sanders. I mean, I think that's gonna be key too, especially that the O-line is gonna just, open those holes for them.
Yeah, and I think with that is just the fact that even when they had the two tight end personnel at that time, I mean they were still able to run that ball. But I think now with just how the offense is set up, it opens it up more for that running game. I feel like more freely. It's not more so downhill running, but it's more so like everything is just opening up for those guys. So yeah, it's so much potential right now, and I just can't wait to see it.
Yeah, and it's a small sample size, 2 games. Miles
Yeah,
Sanders, he's second in the league behind Saquon Barkley and rushing average. He's almost at 6 yards per
yeah.
carry.
Penn State
But
guys.
yeah, you want a bigger sample size since Miles was drafted. What was that, 3-4 years ago?
Yeah,
He's third in the league in rushing average. He's got over 5 yards per carry.
Damn.
I think it's only Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor, again, over
yeah,
these past 3 years, have a better average. The thing with Miles is just being able to stay healthy. Knock
hmm
on wood, if you're an Eagles fan, that he has been pretty healthy
yeah,
this season. But again, they've got Boston Scott and then Kenny Gainwell. He's cemented basically as the 2-minute back. So
yeah,
I think
yeah,
he had a drop this past week, but Nick Sirianni kind of
yeah,
explained that it was more
yeah,
so his fault and not Kenny's fault. With the play call.
yeah,
But Kenny's got the best hands. He's the best pass catcher out of that three. So we spent so much time talking about Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert. I mean, these running backs too, no slouch for sure.
yeah. No slouch. Yep.
See, man, I see
Yeah,
visions of Miles Sanders, kind of like a Brian Westbrook, right, RJ, a little bit.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
That time it was a different dynamic. You had Buck, Westbrook, and then at that time too they even had Deuce.
Deuce Staley.
So
Yeah,
yeah, that running back core, in my opinion, as being a fan, that came a long way, and now it's just a different dynamic. I feel like they're more shifty, if you want to call it that way.
they're
You know,
faster now, right? They're
yeah,
faster.
yeah,
You plug him in on the slot. It's
yeah,
just crazy.
and
Like,
Boston Scott is Mr. Reliable. Just coming out of those games like against the Giants. It just he just be coming out of nowhere.
yeah,
But
Yeah, Boston
yeah,
Scott, he gets so overlooked, man. I mean, you look at in our discussion and kind of how he's like that third back.
hmm
yeah,
Boston, he led the team in touchdowns last year, yo. He has 7.
I know. Yeah,
Kenny was second. He has 6.
damn.
I
yeah,
think Devontae had 4. I mean, like that says it right there. Is that
yeah,
that production that they get out of
Jeez.
those three specifically. But make no mistake about it. The running game will certainly set the tempo. It all starts with
yeah,
Jalen. Again, he can be so dangerous in the RPO game. We're seeing him incrementally improve as a passer. You really got to start and end there with the QB. It all starts there.
right. All right. So with this last question for us, I don't know if you want to do this, but as far as your prediction, pretty much for the Eagles' record being this year, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of potentials. There's a lot to work on, and there's a lot to look forward to. What do you think? What the record will be? Will they finish in the NFC? And of course, this Sunday's game, what do you think will happen? Who do you think will win? So
Yeah, I think I gave them 11 wins at the beginning of the season. Honestly, considering again, it's a lot of recency and it's a lot based on what we just saw this past week.
yeah,
But if we see the defense play like that, as the competition gets tougher, as the schedule goes on, again, the team has a soft schedule here to begin the season.
yeah,
They've got Washington and then the Commanders. I mean, Washington and then the Jaguars.
Jaguars, yeah,
So they're going through the first month of the season without playing a playoff opponent until week 5 at Arizona.
yeah, yeah,
Man, I mean, I could see them exceeding that number. Double digits definitely seems reasonable. But they could get 11, 12. Is that enough to win the division? It might be, especially kind of you see where
yeah,
Dallas is right now. I know New
yeah.
York's off to a hot start, but
2-0.
can
Yeah,
you really believe Daniel Jones up there?
I know, that's
So
crazy, man. Yeah,
yeah, so I think I'll stick with the 11 wins because it really is tough to win in this league, and they've got again, the schedule gets harder later at the
Yeah.
end of the year.
Hmm.
You know, specifically in December, they've got 3 road games
Yeah.
back to back to back. That's a tough time of the year to travel, you know, when it's
Yeah.
cold and you know, 2
Yeah.
of those opponents aren't necessarily scary. You know, they've got the Giants, then they've got
Giants,
Chicago,
Bears,
and then they got Dallas.
Cowboys. Yep.
But again, with the schedule, the time of the year, you know, weird things can happen in the NFL. So, you know, I don't want to
Yeah.
necessarily, you know, say that they'll get 12, 13, but I think 11 is a safe number right now based on what we've seen.
The
And
best
man,
team in the field.
for this upcoming game, y'all want a prediction? What y'all think?
I think
Man,
it's going to be close, to be honest with you. Like you said, it starts with Jalen. In my opinion, I feel like it's going to be a close game. You know, that tough, gritty Commanders, Eagles type game, man. So I think it's going to be, I would like to say it'll be Eagles 24, Washington maybe 27, 21 or 17 maybe. I'll say it that way, in all honesty.
you're too humble, man. You're too humble. Like I'm
Hey.
a realist. I'm a realist Redskins / Commanders fan. This team, I mean, of course, I think it's going to be an emotional game for Carson Wentz, but like I said, a lot of intel. You know, that the Philly defense got a lot of intel on Carson Wentz because pretty much they've practiced with each other. I'm predicting 28-10 Philly. It's going to be a rout. Jalen Hurts probably going to run for he's going to throw for 2, run for 1, and then probably do another gritty in the end zone at FedEx Field. So hopefully there won't be any like injured fans, like last year. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So I know, yeah, but I think 28-10, they'll have a field day. I think it'll be, I think it's gonna be like lopsided, and the running game will be key as well. I think Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Gainwell, I think they'll have all good games running the ball. So how about you, Josh?
Yeah, I think I gave the Eagles the win. I can't remember the point total. It might have been 30-17. I know the spread right now is about like 6.5.
Yeah.
But the thing is I mean, you can't take anything for granted with a division game. You know,
Yeah,
so many
that's what I'm
weird
thinking.
so many
Yeah.
weird things happens, you know, in those types of matchups. But I think I wrote this, you know, for Sunday's paper. But essentially, if Jalen Hurts takes care of the ball, they should be fine.
Yeah.
You know, the Commanders again, they've got that formidable defensive front with the 3 main guys.
Yep.
But they're going to be up against one of the better, if not the best, offensive line in football. Once those 3 get tired out, and you know, when you got a quarterback like Jalen Hurts who showed on Monday that he can throw the ball. Obviously, he's made so many plays with his feet. I mean, they might get tired pretty quick. So, and one more thing, Carson Wentz, man, it's like when you know he's under center, there's additional turnovers for the taking. So,
Mhm.
you know, if they're able to get to him just a few times early, I think it'll rattle him, and you know, that the Eagles will be looking here at 3-0, heading back to Philly.
Yeah. I
Crazy.
mean, I only said that that close of a game because I don't want to say it's one of my concerns, but you know, as much as I want to score, I want them to score more. I feel like some teams are just hanging around. I mean, which is understandable, especially for the last game. They were just dominating. They were just content with having 24 points. But the Detroit game, Detroit kind
Jared
of
Goff had
scored like
4 touchdowns.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. So that was a little
Man, that's
concerning.
during that's like towards the end of the game, man.
Still,
Like
you got to finish. In my opinion, as a fan, you have to finish.
he pulled
You
a
don't
Kirk
let a
Cousins,
team
man. Empty calorie stats,
exactly.
bro.
Division games are tough, nitty-gritty games. So, I mean, the history with these teams. I mean, it never goes that way. It's always going to be a close game, in my opinion. So, yeah, but I feel like that's how it's going to be, and we'll see how it goes from there, man.
Yeah, obviously the personnel is really different, but you look at last year's game at Washington. I mean, that was like literally to the last second. You know, Bobby McCain
Exactly.
had that, or not Bobby McCain, excuse me. Rodney McLeod had that. I got the safeties mixed up, but Rodney McLeod
Yeah,
had
yeah,
that pick at the end of the game. You know, these division matchups again, they could be spicy in that regard, but on paper, the Eagles are the much better team when you just look at the talent and you know what we've seen these first 2 weeks. So, but again, I don't know. I think it comes down to Carson Wentz, man, and you know if they're able to get to him early.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be the battle of the quarterback. So one last question for you, Josh. I wanted to ask you. Um, I know the Phillies bye week is week 7, and you said you guys don't play a winning team until week 5. If the Eagles make it 7-0 or 6-1 before the bye week, do you think? And I'm just throwing it out there. Do you think Jalen Hurts could be possibly on his way to be like maybe a candidate for a league MVP, or I'm sure perennial Pro Bowl for real, definitely. But do you think sky's the limit? You know, maybe perhaps future NFL MVP for the league.
Man, it's so tough to stay just because of the unknownness, you know, especially when it comes to the passing game. But I mean, as we saw this past week, I mean, the stat that sticks out to me is that he had 4 different receivers with 60 yards receiving or more. I mean, that's like freaking ball distribution. Like it's not just favoring AJ Brown, but you know, he was getting out to Devontae, Quez Watkins, Dallas Goedert. I mean, if he continues those types of performances, of course, you know, he's only going to work his way towards that. But it's probably just too early to tell right now. I mean, they've got Washington, then they got Jacksonville. Again, they don't play a playoff opponent until week 5, Arizona, and then Sunday Night Football against Dallas at home. Yeah, it's so tough. I mean, it's game by game, week by week. I mean, that's what Nick Sirianni literally preaches to his guys. But yep. I mean, if you're talking about like the betting experts, you know, the people that like are in charge of putting the odds together, like Jalen Hurts, I'm pretty sure this week, like he leaped from his odds were like pretty low to like, you know, top 5, top 10.
He's
you know,
actually
depending where you're looking at.
he's actually top 5 right now. He's tied up with Justin Herbert as odds to win MVP, just behind Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So he's
Yeah,
top
and
4.
I'm pretty sure before that, like he was like 15 to 20. So, I mean, yeah, I mean the league is definitely taking notice in that regard. But again, a lot in front of them. Obviously, they want to advance further than they were last season, and you know Jalen wants to prove that he's the guy. So, but I mean, if he has performances like this past 2 weeks, you know, he'll certainly be on his way.
Yep, and I am a Jalen Hurts fan, franchise owner of you know, so I will be playing him this Sunday, you know, for fantasy league purposes. You know, I did franchise him over Russell Wilson last year in my league, and a lot of people were like, "Yeah, you crazy, man!" Like, no, I think he has something. So,
yeah, with the running game, especially, man, it's like when they get in the red zone, like within the 10. I mean, your probability of him scoring a rushing touchdown, it's like leaps. Like they just love that RPO in that area of the field.
Yep. Iron sharpens iron, man.
Pretty much, man. Well, that wraps it up, Josh. Thank you so much for your time. I'm glad everything's going well with you. And you know, I'm saying like Josh's family, you know, that's kind of like a homecoming every time like he comes back home. So yeah, man, you know, like it's great, you know, talking to him, and I'm glad everything's going well. Year 2. Anything for Josh, RJ?
Yeah, man. Like I said, just keep doing your thing. We're proud of you, man. You know, the fact that you're covering my favorite team, that's a plus, man. Like I said, I follow you. I read everything that's going on practice, and it's just amazing. You know, just the resources I got now. You know, before, you know, I mean, I still follow the guys that I follow on Twitter and watch everybody on YouTube, but you know, just seeing your tweets and everything, man, that's just that's a lot of insight. So
yeah, definitely.
Thank you for that, man.
Yeah, then,
yeah, man, trying to stay plugged in, man, tapped in, try to do it a little bit, different, man. I mean, you got to remember too, like, as much as you know, fantasy owners like to idolize these guys, like they like the same stuff we do, man. Like they you know, they like they say music, they play video games. Like it's always good to chop it up. You know, in that regard, me and Kenny we're talking today about the Modern Warfare 2.
Beta.
Yeah, getting on that beta. Me and Jordan Mailata, we're talking about video games too today. So But yeah, man, it's been great, man. Just loving the continuity here on year 2, man.
Yeah.
It's really just continuing to build those relationships.
Yeah. So like I said, we're definitely, we're rooting for you, Josh, and you got some you do have some Philly like fans. You got Eagle fans. Shout out to Daniel and Andrew and RJ. We do have Eagle fans in this family too, and we got a reporter that covers them. So
I gotta sneak this one in. So the shirt here, yo, I wore it to work last week.
Yeah.
And me and Jordan Davis, we had already built like a pretty good rapport. Like I've been talking to him every day. But like the day before that, like he had seen me, I wore a Bape shirt to work. And that was a conversation starter for us. Like he's like, we need more streetwear in here. So the next day I wore the pod shirt, and Jordan Davis, like he was wondering what it was. So I kind of gave him the backstory on y'all pod. So maybe he'll tap in.
Hey, shout out to Jordan Davis. Gotta get him on the pod. We need more subs. Shout out to Jordan Davis, man. We need more athletes in this pod, man. I appreciate it.
He noticed the player prices. So like
we got
I forgot his
days.
I forgot his size feet, but I think he's like a 15 or 16.
Yeah,
this the same.
Boy.
Yeah, this the same man. Like they traded up for him, got him with their top pick. Boy, this boy can move, man. He really is the future. With Fletcher, getting older. Jordan Davis, man, watch out the next couple of years. I think in the combine, we're talking about a dude that's 340. He weighed 340, and he ran like a 4.8. Like I think that's faster than
that is crazy.
That's like Vita Vea, like running a 40.
Yeah, man, that's faster than me, yo. So
he's faster than me too.
Yeah, I'll tell him, to tap in with the pod because he had asked about the shirt.
Hey, we definitely gonna get on. We talk about sneakers, we'll try to help him out for size 15.
I think it might be bigger. I'll check in and see.
But for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Josh. So we thank you so much for coming on. Safe travels, back to the DMV. I know, like I said, that's a homecoming. It's always a treat for our family to see you. We're proud of you. You know what I mean? And yeah, man. Like, if you want to plug in one more time your social media and where they can find you.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to the game. Sunday fun day, like what the fam says. But yeah, my Twitter, Instagram is JCT Sports. And then again, I got that pregame show before the game. It'll be at 11:30, so 90 minutes before kickoff. It's called Game Day Central, and you can tap into that on Twitter, JCT Sports.
All right,
guys. All right, so that wraps it up for episode 53. Happy birthday again to RJ, year 36. Mike, Brian Westbrook year. More birthdays to come.
36. He would be the oldest in the locker room. Jason Kelsey and BG. I think they're turning 35.
Dang, you're as old as Kelsey.
That's crazy.
Older. Older. By a year.
Damn.
Damn. What am I doing in my life?
That's cool, man.
Hey, I know it's cool. It's cool. But yeah, appreciate it, bro, man.
All right, guys.
Yeah, no, happy to hop on, y'all. Every time when the Eagles Commanders link up again later in the year.
We'll talk more. We'll talk more. Like, we'll probably get you back on for Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be cool. Catch up. Hopefully, if everything is cool, with your schedule. So yeah, we definitely appreciate it, Josh.
Yep. No, I'm tapped in every time. Just let me know.
All right, for sure, guys. All right, guys. Have a good night, guys. Peace.
All right, all love.